Doom, and Halo. Two absolute juggernauts of the first-person shooter genre. Now clearly, these two franchises are very different, but both have had an undeniably massive influence on the first-person shooters that followed their releases. Since I have just recently completed Halo Infinite's campaign for the third time, I've had plenty of time to think about the importance of this title, and one of the first things I noticed is that it has something in common with Doom 2016. 343 has managed to revitalize the Halo franchise with this game, much in the same way that its software revitalized the Doom franchise by updating Doom's mechanics while also keeping close to Doom's roots. With that being said, I shouldn't pretend like this was something that surprised me. I wanted Halo Infinite to be Halo's very own Doom 2016-like soft reboot, and I must say that I was certainly not disappointed. And based on reactions from most of the Halo community, it seems as though many would agree. Before we get into the meat of this video, it should be noted that I will not be discussing the multiplayer. Only the campaigns of both titles will be focused on, and similarly, that campaign gameplay will be what you are seeing. And so without further ado, let's get into this. We will start at the beginning, and by that I mean with the original Doom, all the way back in 1993. There are plenty of other videos out there that go very in-depth when discussing Doom's history, so in other words, the topic has been beaten to death, so I will keep my synopsis brief. In 1993, Doom was released onto the world, and gaming was forever changed. This was the title that would make the first-person shooter genre popular. The premise of the game was simple. Demons from Hell have invaded a United Aerospace Corporation facility on Phobos, one of Mars's moons, after a teleportation experiment has gone horribly wrong. Everyone in the facility is killed except for you, a lone space marine who now must fight through the hordes and defeat whatever has led this demonic charge. The gameplay was fast, ferocious, violent, and bloody, with lots of big guns. In the game, you would start off with a pistol, which would of course be quickly replaced by the workhorse that was the shotgun, but it didn't stop there. Your arsenal would soon grow to include a chain gun, chainsaw, influenced by the Evil Dead franchise, rocket launcher, plasma rifle, and the almighty BFG 9000, all of which you could carry at the same time. In 1994, Doom 2 was released. It was the sequel, obviously, to the first game, ran on the same engine, but levels were played continuously throughout the entire game, which was different than the episodic structure that the first game followed. There were also some new enemies added to the combat loop, as well as one new weapon. But it was a pretty important new weapon, the super shotgun, and what's better than a shotgun with one barrel? Well, a shotgun with two barrels. Doom 2's far more expansive set of enemies and larger, more chaotic arena fights would come to be the template for the future of Doom. But it took a long time for this to be the case, as a much slower-paced, numerically titled Doom game would come first. In 2004, we got Doom 3, a much slower-paced, atmospheric, and horror-based take on the Doom formula. Though Doom 3 has been criticized by many Doom fans for quite some time, in recent years it would seem as though players have warmed up to it, and I would include myself in that group. Many fans of the franchise have come to appreciate Doom 3 for what it is, simply a different take on Doom. And it is most definitely far from being a bad game. In fact, it is quite good, with all of its darkness and oppressive, claustrophobic atmosphere. Even today, few games come close to the beautiful, dynamic lighting and shadows seen in Doom 3, even though the textures might be a bit on the blurry side by today's standards. After the release of Doom 3, Doom 4 was supposed to be quick to follow, but as many Doom fans would know by now, it was caught up in development hell. Trailers, brief glimpses of gameplay, and screenshots were eventually leaked, and many compared what they saw to Call of Duty, with some even referring to the footage as Call of Doom. Fortunately for everyone, the developers at id Software seemed to have the same feelings after a while, and the original approach to Doom 4 was eventually scrapped, and ideas that centered around taking Doom back to its roots began to emerge within the company. In the time leading up to Doom 2016's release, Doom fans were getting hyped, largely due to a teaser at QuakeCon 2014 featuring the silhouette of the newly revamped Cyberdemon. And on May 13th, 2016, fans were gifted this extraordinary experience. Doom was back. Doom was fast and brutally violent again, with some pointing to the mod Brutal Doom by Sergeant Mark IV as the possible inspiration for some of Doom's new combat mechanics, such as the glory kill and its just overall ultra-violence. Doom 2016 follows a similar structure to the classic Doom games. Much like Doom 2, the player progresses through the levels without any episodic structure, and like both classic games, keycards must be located on many levels to gain access to certain rooms and to progress. Most importantly though, Doom Guy, our silent and very angry protagonist, who is now referred to as the Doomslayer, moved through the game's spaces at ridiculous speeds. Doom 3's slow movement, reloading of weapons was done away with in favor of the lack of reloading seen in the classic games, which was something that first-person shooter fans had not seen in years, and it was oh so refreshing. Not having to reload your guns was just such a big positive change, and fans of Doom and other classic shooters embraced it with open arms. Also, much like other old-school shooters in keeping with the Doom tradition, you could carry the game's entire arsenal with you at all times. Doom 2016 updated the classic Doom gameplay by adding the Glory Kill, a mechanic that involved staggering an enemy and ending them with a brutal melee finisher that would reward the player with health points. This led to Doom 2016's push-forward combat system. There was no hiding behind cover and regenerating health. If you wanted to get health back, you had to push even harder against the enemies and continue being aggressive as long as you were engaged in combat. To go along with this combat system, you could also get ammo back via the chainsaw, as this weapon's function was altered from the simple close quarters option that it once was. The number one rule, much like in old Doom games, was to never stop moving. The enemies were always hunting you down, but all you had to do to emerge victorious in an arena fight was to maintain your status as the hunter. During Doom's development, it became apparent that this was not a game about you being trapped in hell with the demons. It was a game about the demons being trapped in hell with you, which is a concept that composer Mick Gordon took influence from while creating the game's incredible, heavy, and very unique soundtrack. Doom 2016 was a legitimate throwback to not only classic Doom, but classic first-person shooters from the 90s in general. Following the release of this soft reboot, games like Duke Nukem 3D, Blood, Shadow Warrior, Heretic, Hexen, Quake found new, younger fans, and with this also came a retro shooter renaissance. During this renaissance period, games like Dusk, Medieval, and Ion Fury were released, and this indie developer movement is still going on to this day. It also helped that reboots of Shadow Warrior in 2013 and Wolfenstein in 2014, before Doom 2016's release, saw great success, but it cannot be denied that Doom 2016's release seemed to make the most noise. Amazingly, the Fun Zone, as lead designer Hugo Martin calls this trance-like yet ultra-focused state, that was found in Doom 2016's combat was made even better in Doom Eternal. Doom 2016 had already added a double jump to the game's movement, but Doom Eternal allows the player to swing from these things called monkey bars. You can double dash both in the air and on the ground. You can wall climb. Doom 2016 had also added weapon mods to the Doom experience, which were attachments you could attain that gave your guns powerful alternate fire modes, and Doom Eternal also updated this system. While many mods in Doom 2016 would go unused, as there were some that were obviously more useful than others, Doom Eternal's weapon mods all have their uses, and it depends much more on playstyle when it comes to which weapon mods get used, or even more interestingly, in what situations. On top of all that, Doom Eternal added even more enemies to the roster and even more equipment types, like the Flame Belch, a shoulder-mounted flamethrower that would give you armor back when you use it on enemies, and a reworked chainsaw that recharges one pip on a cooldown, meaning that you didn't always have to scavenge chainsaw pips from the environment, and a new grenade type that freezes enemies. Then, of course, there's one of the best parts of the game, the meat hook, a new device attached to the super shotgun that allows the player to grapple onto enemies to pull themselves in for a close quarters blast in the face, and it is cathartic as hell. The bottom line is this: Doom 2016 and its sequel, Doom Eternal, are incredible games, with Doom Eternal being my favorite game of all time, seriously. But now, we should get into the other half of this video, the Halo franchise. And I should make it clear that I am not as much of an expert when it comes to Halo as when it comes to Doom and other, now as they're called, boomer shooters. But I have become more acquainted with the Halo franchise recently, and I have gotten to understand it more recently. So, with that out of the way, let's get into it. So in 2001, Halo Combat Evolved would be developed by Bungie and released with the original Xbox. And while Doom popularized first-person shooters on the personal computer platform, Halo would seek to popularize first-person shooters on console, even more so than GoldenEye 64. Revolving around the story of a war between humanity and a conglomerate of alien religious fanatics known as the Covenant, players would step into the green power armor of the Master Chief, Sierra 117, a 7-foot-tall super soldier, genetically enhanced and trained via the controversial Spartan program, a program that would bring in kids and, well, turn them into super soldiers. Throughout his journey, he would be joined by his trusty AI Cortana, and players would go from mission to mission, blasting through the alien threat. Halo is very different from Doom in that it is slower paced, weapons require reloading, and there is a regenerating shield that functions much like regenerating health. The first Halo game still had a health bar though, along with the regenerating shield, and this was replenished by picking up health packs found in the environment. So in that way, it was still somewhat similar to Doom. Halo is also similar to Doom in that there are different enemy types that have different behaviors and require varied strategies to take down. For instance, take the Grunts. Grunts could be picked off one by one with a single headshot from the Magnum, or entire groups of Grunts could be cleared by being sprayed down with the assault rifle. Elites, on the other hand, were equal to the player since they had a shield that often had to be taken down first before they could be dealt a killing blow. Then there were the Jackals, an enemy that carried an energy shield that could be temporarily disabled by shooting their hand. Although, there were certainly other ways that you could take out enemies. Maybe you toss a frag grenade at a Jackal's feet to take them out. Or maybe you rush an elite and one-shot them with the shotgun. Or maybe you stick them with a plasma grenade. One of Halo's greatest strengths is that it offers a great deal of player choice. The combat sandbox is just different from Doom's. Halo would inevitably be followed up with a sequel in 2004. Halo 2 would do away with the health bar entirely and would only have the regenerating shield as the game's sole quote-unquote health system. Halo 2 would add several more weapons to the game's sandbox, most notably the battle rifle, which became a go-to weapon due to its utility and versatility. The enemy faction in Halo, known as the Covenant, would also have a gun that served as the equal to this, the Covenant Carbine, which could also be carried with the beam rifle, the Covenant sniper equivalent, and of course the weapon of choice for those oh-so-deadly sniper Jackals. In addition to this, the Covenant's energy sword, something that was in the first game, could now be wielded by the player, and some missions involved playing as the Covenant's Master Chief equivalent, the Arbiter. Halo 2's story would end on a cliffhanger, and this story arc would be continued with the launch of Halo 3 in 2007. Halo 3 was the first Halo game to be on the Xbox 360, and much like Halo 2 before it, it was extremely successful, popular, and profitable. In Halo 3, due to a civil conflict within the Covenant that involved the Elites and the Brutes, a species introduced in Halo 2, the Elites were now on the side of the UNSC, the human faction. And the addition of Brutes as a new enemy type led to the addition of a few more weapons to the sandbox. And it should be noted that Brutes had shown up in Halo 2, but they were much more fleshed out in Halo 3. Therefore, some of their weapons, like the Mauler or the Brute Spiker, were added. Gameplay was basically a more polished version of Halo 2, and Halo 3 would bring about the end of Bungie's original Halo trilogy. Halo 3 was followed up with a couple of spin-off titles by Bungie, with Halo 3 ODST in 2009, which followed the events of some ODSTs during the assault on Mombasa in Halo 2. And then there was Halo Reach in 2010. Halo Reach would serve as a prequel to Halo Combat Evolved and contained a story centering around a team of Spartans fighting a losing war against an oppressive Covenant force on the planet Reach. Armor abilities would be added to the game, one of which being Sprint. Now, of course, Sprint has been a controversial topic within the Halo community, with many believing that sprinting disrupts the balance of Halo's gameplay. But in Halo Reach, it was but one of multiple armor abilities that the player could pick up. This would eventually be changed in Halo 4. While Bungie was working on Halo Reach, the torch was being passed on to 343 Industries, a newly formed studio which had the primary role of continuing the Halo franchise. After releasing a 10th anniversary edition of Combat Evolved in 2011 in collaboration with a couple support studios, 343 would go on to release Halo 4 in 2012 and was met with mixed responses from fans. The game was deemed to be somewhat lackluster and disappointing, not living up to the legacy built by the original Bungie trilogy. New armor abilities were brought into Halo 4, and Sprint was now an ability that the player always had. Some fans did not care for the gameplay, some thought the gameplay was fine. Some fans didn't care for the story, some thought the story was very well written, and they enjoyed how it gave the audience a deeper look into the relationship between Cortana and the Master Chief. Although what most fans agreed on was that the changes made to the art style were a big step in the wrong direction. On top of that, the sophisticated and impressive enemy AI that the Halo series was known for seemed to be a bit dumber in Halo 4. In 2014, Halo 2 would be remastered for its 10th anniversary edition by 343 Industries and a few support studios, with campaign cutscenes replaced by cinematics created by Blur Studio. This remaster would go on to receive much praise for its gorgeous updated graphics that managed to keep in line with the original's art style. However, it was released as part of the Master Chief Collection, which saw a disastrous and buggy launch. 343 continued to have trouble when they released Halo 5 Guardians in 2015. Panned by fans and critics alike, the campaign did not feel like a Halo game to many, and the art style was far from what had been established in the original trilogy. Shortly after this point in time, it could be assumed that 343 finally realized that they had to make a change. They had to return Halo to its roots, much like what id Software found they had to do with Doom. At this point, I should make it clear that Halo Infinite is very different from the original trilogy, but mostly in a good way. It is very much a modern, altered take on the Halo formula, but much of what lies at the base of Halo Infinite's design is grounded in what makes Halo, Halo. Released on December 8th of 2021, Halo Infinite has been praised by fans as a return to form for the franchise. It takes that classic Halo combat loop that we know and love and revamps it. Halo Infinite blends linear story missions with an open-world structure that offers the player a vast landscape to explore with many side objectives to take care of along the way. As stated previously, Halo Infinite and Doom 2016 are two very different games, but the steps that were taken in their design benefits the experience found in both games greatly. For one, the art style from the original trilogy is back. It is modernized and given much more graphical fidelity, but it is definitely back. Halo Infinite is a downright beautiful game, and both its interior and exterior environments display so much artistic flair. The weapon sandbox is there, but it is different. And I would argue it is better than the previous weapon sandboxes we have seen in past Halo games. There's no weapon redundancy like how I said previously. In Halo 2 you had the battle rifle and the Covenant carbine, which essentially served the same purpose, much like the beam rifle and the sniper rifle. So no weapon redundancy like past games, and every weapon in Halo Infinite has a use as long as you understand what that use is, how to get the most out of that use, and as long as your skill with said weapon can display that utility to its full potential. For instance, want to disable an enemy vehicle? Well, hit it with electrical damage. Want to do a bunch of electrical damage to a powerful enemy quickly? Toss a dynamo grenade at them and compound the damage with a headshot or two from the shock rifle. Sure, you could always hang back from a distance and pick enemies off with a sniper rifle or battle rifle, but what's the fun in that? I mean, you could do that every now and then, but you're going to have a lot more fun if you just get in there and cause some chaos. Utilize the combat sandbox as much as possible and you will enjoy the hell out of this game. Much like Doom 2016, Halo Infinite also has a progression and upgrade system. Whereas the new Doom games have systems for upgrading your suit, equipment, and weapons, Halo Infinite zones in on upgrading specific equipment that you can add to your arsenal. You can use what are called Spartan cores to upgrade your shield, thruster, drop wall, threat sensor, and grapple shot. Oh, the grapple shot. The grapple shot is truly what makes Halo Infinite's combat stand head and shoulders over past games. You can grapple onto an enemy and pull yourself in to finish them off with a melee hit. You can grapple onto a fusion coil and hurl it at an enemy for massive explosive damage. You can grapple to a point that gets you out of danger quickly and efficiently when your health is low. You can even grapple onto a weapon that is sitting on the ground or even on a weapon rack and pull it right into your hands. No more having to walk up to a weapon to pick it up. The grapple shot adds so much speed and ferocity to Halo's combat loop, something that the series, I feel, has always needed. It almost feels like the grapple shot should have always been a part of Halo's gameplay, and that is a big deal. On top of that, the grapple shot is extremely useful when traversing the open world. Yeah, you can drive across the map in a warthog or a mongoose, but if you want to scale a mountain, use that grapple shot. It is your best and only option if you don't have a wasp to fly around in yet. You can literally scale cliff sides that are perpendicular to the ground with the grapple shot. I mean, the steepest cliff sides. It is an amazing tool, and it is one of the most important aspects of Halo Infinite's gameplay experience. And it has to be said, if you scale a mountain and go all the way to the top, more likely than not, you're going to find something really cool up there. You're going to either find a collectible or an audio log or something, a propaganda tower maybe, which is something that you can destroy in the game. I mean, it really is worth it. Even sprinting feels good in Halo Infinite. And the best part about sprinting in this game is that there is no stamina bar, not a visible or invisible one. No stamina bar, period. Your sprint is unlimited. It should also be noted that the gunplay feels great. Shots have impact and weight to them. This is by far the best that Halo's combat has ever been, which is something that id Software accomplished with the new Doom games. And now 343 has done the same. Like I said, id Software with those new Doom games, they just took the spirit of Doom and the fastness and the ferocity of it, and they just modernized it. And they made it feel really good to play as a modern game, and they brought a new audience to Doom. So going back to Halo, the story is something that I won't get into, but it is definitely good. Not amazing, but solid. And you can probably tell from the rest of this video that it is the gameplay that I am most concerned with when it comes to first-person shooters. So yeah, Halo Infinite and Doom 2016 are both great games and are both examples of how to successfully revitalize a franchise. Now both Doom and Halo are really big again, and it feels good to be a part of both communities. I mean, they're just in a really good place right now, I would say, both franchises. Hell, I didn't really get into Halo or understand it or how its combat worked until very recently. It wasn't until the Master Chief Collection was released on PC and I had plenty of time to play around in every game in that compilation. And I didn't get into Doom until around 2015, so shortly before Doom 2016's release. I saw the trailer for Doom 2016. I thought, wow, that looks cool. I've heard of Doom before. I checked out the classic games. I always loved old games, so I jumped into it, and that's actually how I got into PC gaming and first-person shooters. So I have that Doom 2016 trailer to thank for me really checking out all of these great retro first-person shooters and modern throwbacks to those shooters. So yeah, thanks to both of these incredible series, I have been shown just how much fun first-person shooters can be, and I am forever grateful to the developers for that. And with that, I will end this video, my first video that I have actually put a lot of effort into, so we'll see what happens. We'll see how many people watch it, how many people notice, how many people like it, see what kind of feedback I get. I'm sure there's a lot that I need to work on. But anyway, to whoever watches this, I wish you all the best. Stay safe and play lots of first-person shooters.